Please let your voice be heard right here on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem.
I woke up getting ready to talk about the death penalty.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, believe it or not, I wrote my law school thesis on the death penalty in Europe.
What have you not done?
Been
black?
No, I haven't been black.
I don't think you can do that.
I've also have not been a man.
Or have you?
Not that I know of.
Okay, cool.
Anyways, so let's talk about guns, but not in the way you would think we would be talking about them. Because this segment, this quickie, is not about gun control. It's actually about the firing squad and about Utah, and it's about the death penalty. So last week, lawmakers in Utah approved a bill that would make firing squads, would make firing squads the state's backup method of execution if lethal injection drugs could not be obtained. Now, before we get into why, in fact, Utah is doing this, let's go over the history really quickly about the death penalty and the firing squad in Utah so that you have some context and you have some background. Utah Territory, before it was even a state, was established in 1850. Starting the same year, 1850, Utah began to permit condemned prisoners to choose between hanging and firing squad. Now, in 1955, Utah introduced the electric chair, but it was never used as a method for execution because in 1972, in a case known as Furman versus Georgia, the Supreme Court put a hold on capital punishment. They said that they felt that it was inconsistent with where we were in society, and they essentially issued a moratorium on it. That moratorium went on for 4 years until 1976, where in a follow-up case to Furman, known as Georgia v. Gregg, the Supreme Court reinstated capital punishment in the United States. In 1980, after that, that was 1976. So 4 years later, in 1980, lethal injection was introduced in the United States, and it became the primary method of execution. And it was also the primary method of execution in Utah. However, in Utah, the condemned, those people sentenced to death, could still choose the firing squad up until 2004, when the firing squad was outlawed going forward only. This meant that those who were convicted and placed on death row before 2004 could still choose the firing squad as a method, and a handful of death row prisoners in Utah are still eligible for the firing squad now, but only if they choose it. You should note that the last person to choose the firing squad was a guy named Ronnie Lee Gardner, who was executed by a firing squad in 2010. Now, this bill, which is known as HB 11, would let the state impose the firing squad against an inmate's will. It would no longer be by choice, and I'm going to explain to you why. So first, let's talk about what the law actually says. The name of the bill is HB, House Bill 11. It modifies the Utah Code of Criminal Procedure regarding the execution of the death penalty, and it provides that if substances for lethal injection are not available to carry out the death penalty on the date specified by the death warrant for the person to be executed, then the death penalty shall, which means has to be, in legal terminology, be carried out by the firing squad. The bill still leaves open the option for those sentenced to death prior to 2004, but right now the law as it's currently written only states that the firing squad is the method of execution if lethal injection is held to be unconstitutional. So there already is a provision that says if execution by lethal injection is held to be unconstitutional, either on its face or as applied, the method of execution will be the firing squad. This bill actually takes this one step further and doesn't say just if the method of execution of lethal injection is found to be unconstitutional, then the use is the firing squad. It says if we can't get the drugs to execute you within 30 days of the date that you're supposed to be executed, then we can use the firing squad to execute you.
Oh.
And I'm going to tell you why they're pushing this law in a minute, but before I get there, I want to tell you what's going to happen next, and then we'll get to the why. I want to end with the why, because I think the why is really important, and you should hear about it last. So the governor has to sign the bill into law, just like any other bill that's becoming a law. The governor in Utah, his name is Gary Herbert. At first, he came out, he said he was unsure if he would sign it into law because he said he prefers, and I'm quoting here, the needle to the bullet, meaning he prefers lethal injection over firing squad. But he also said that he needs to make sure that his state, Utah, has a backup plan to carry out capital punishment if lethal injection drugs become unavailable. And then actually in his most recent statements, which came out, I think it was 2 days ago, he indicated that he would in fact sign the law. He said, quote, "I'm leaning towards signing it." He said the debate is really more than just the firing squad. The debate is really whether or not we should have capital punishment or not. So now let's get to the why. Why the firing squad? Well, this debate is happening because there is an ongoing shortage of lethal injection drugs. That has been what's cited by the bill's sponsor. And this is actually a fact. A lot of these drugs that are used in executions, menthol or something like that. There's a 3-drug cocktail combination that was always used, but a lot of these drugs are made in Europe, and these European countries, the European companies that manufacture these drugs have said they are no longer comfortable with these drugs being used in America for lethal injection, and so they either stop making them or they refuse to sell them. This has actually created a huge shortage of lethal injection drugs. It's prompted Utah and other states to consider returning to other methods of execution, like a gas chamber, firing squad, hanging, and other. One of the proposals I was just reading in Oklahoma the other day, I'm not going to get into, is using nitrogen gas. We have a second, so I'll tell you briefly about that. It's just a side note, which is nitrogen gas is known to kill people, or said to kill people, in a very non-painful and quick manner.
Yeah.
And basically, they cite a story where a guy goes down into a coal mine. There's a lot of nitrogen gas down there. You never realize that there's not enough oxygen in the air, and you just essentially drop dead, and it's quick and painless.
Yeah.
And that then somebody else, let's say, goes down to save this person, and then they drop dead. And so they are saying that we should use nitrogen chambers to execute people, because nitrogen is a gas that's found in the air, and it would be easy to get. That's the Oklahoma proposal. I'm not going to get into detail on the Oklahoma proposal because I don't want to.
Why don't we just not kill people?
Well, that's a bigger debate. That is an ongoing debate about whether or not we should still have capital punishment, and a lot of states in this country have actually outlawed it. But just getting back to why the firing squad, as I already mentioned, states across the country are really having difficulty obtaining the chemicals for lethal injection because the manufacturers either won't produce them or won't sell them for the purposes of killing somebody. And the other thing is that new drug combinations that have been devised to kind of fill the void, they're under attack. They're under legal attack. Right now, the Supreme Court is going to be reviewing the constitutionality of Oklahoma lethal injection protocol. So I don't know if you remember, but last year there was a botched execution of a guy named Clayton Lockett. They administered him an untested mix of drugs that they had never used before due to the fact they could not get the 3-drug combination. And people who were there who witnessed the execution said that he was in pain, that it took him a long time to die, that he was mumbling and grumbling, and it was just, and so there was a challenge. They went to this, they brought a legal challenge saying that this drug that had never been used before, using them violated the 8th Amendment. Yeah. Now, the Supreme Court is going to be hearing that case, and the Supreme Court could say that they're now outlawing lethal injection using untested drugs. That would leave all of these death penalty states without any other options. So that's really what's going on with Utah with the firing squad proposal, is that they're afraid that if the Supreme Court rules that new drug cocktails of lethal injection are unconstitutional, they're going to have no method left, since they've removed all the other methods of executing people from the books. The last thing that you should know is just the two sides of the argument about the firing squad, which is those who favor the option of the firing squad say it's cheaper because bullets cost less, and that trained marksmen offer a faster and a more humane death than a drawn-out ones that are sometimes seen in inhumane lethal injections that are done by drug combinations that we don't know if they work. Yeah. Essentially, their argument is we know a bullet works, and we know that the firing squad works, and it's quick, and it's painless, and it's cheaper, and we should just, it's been tested, and we've used it before, and we know that it's constitutional, so we should just do it. On the other hand, those who are against the firing squad say that it's barbaric, it's archaic, and it's inhumane, and that it violates the 8th Amendment.
Yeah, I'm sad. Why?
Well, we're one of the very few countries in the world that still executes people, along with, this is a good list, China, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, I believe, ISIS.
Yes.
So honestly, you might not like that, but America has something in common with ISIS, which is we execute people. Although the difference is they execute people for not doing anything wrong, and we execute people for committing crimes, arguably heinous crimes. But in their mind, they see some of the things that they're executing people for as being heinous crimes. So
yeah, I'm gonna go lay down and cry now. So we will be back next week, guys. And when we do come back, Selena will be here again. I can't lock her out next week as well. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the calls. This is Let Your Voice Be Heard. I'm really sad.